What if everything you thought about vitamins after 60 was wrong? What if some could actually harm you? Susan never imagined that a simple morning would turn her life upside down. At 62, she had grown used to the rhythm of her quiet life in the suburbs of Atlanta, a routine of morning coffee, a walk around the neighborhood, and an afternoon spent reading or chatting with her daughter on the phone. But this morning was different. It started with a sharp pain in her chest, a squeezing pressure that made her breath hitch. She sat down slowly on her kitchen chair, clutching the countertop for support. "Not now," she whispered to herself. But the ache intensified, spreading into her left arm. Panic fluttered in her chest alongside the pain. Was this a heart attack? Before Susan could call 911, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend, Linda. "How are you feeling today? Ready for our book club?" The normalcy of the text clashed brutally with the chaos in Susan's body. She pressed her hand to her chest and sat still, fighting the urge to scream. Minutes later, the pain eased enough for her to call her daughter, Emma. "Mom. What's wrong?" Emma's voice cracked with concern on the other end. "I'm not sure. I think it's my heart," Susan said, trying to keep her voice calm. Emma told her to call 911 immediately. As the ambulance arrived, Susan's mind raced through the last few years. She'd always tried to be careful, taking vitamins religiously, eating well, walking every day. She thought she was doing everything right. But now, lying in a hospital bed with an IV drip in her arm, questions flooded her. Had the vitamins she took really helped? Could they have hurt her? Was she missing something? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Susan was no stranger to challenges. Widowed 5 years ago, she had raised Emma on her own, juggling jobs as a teacher and then a tutor to keep the household afloat. She had always put others first, often neglecting her own health. When the heart scare happened, it was a stark wake-up call. She had spent years popping multivitamins and supplements she'd seen on TV or read about online. Vitamin D for bones, vitamin C for immunity, omega-3 for the heart, the ads promised. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to do everything she could to stay healthy and strong for Emma and herself. But the hospital stay forced Susan to confront a harsh reality. What if her well-meaning efforts had been misguided? What if some of those vitamins were doing more harm than good? She'd heard rumors from friends, read alarming headlines. Some supplements can be dangerous, especially for people over 60. But she had brushed them off. Until now. During her hospital stay, Susan met Dr. Patel, a cardiologist who didn't sugarcoat the facts. Vitamins can be a double-edged sword, he explained one afternoon. Taking certain supplements without proper guidance, especially after 60, can cause serious problems, interactions with medications, toxicities, even increasing the risk of heart disease or strokes. Susan listened carefully, heart pounding in more ways than one. "Did you know," Dr. Patel continued, "that some vitamins like high-dose vitamin A or excessive vitamin E might actually increase your risk for certain illnesses rather than prevent them?" Susan's mind reeled. She had taken those same vitamins religiously for years. As she lay in the hospital bed that evening, the question she couldn't shake was, what should I be taking? More importantly, what should I never take? Determined to find answers, Susan resolved to dig deeper than the ads and the hearsay. She would take control of her health story, no matter how complicated or confusing it got. Because, if she learned anything that day, it was this: in your 60s, health is more complicated than just popping a pill. It requires knowledge, care, and sometimes, a complete rethink of what you thought you knew. That night, back home after discharge, Susan sat with a notebook in her lap. The quiet of her living room was peaceful, but her thoughts churned. She wrote at the top of the page. What vitamins to never take after 60? What vitamins to start today? Her journey was just beginning. In the coming weeks, Susan would discover surprising truths, facts backed by science and medical experts that challenged everything she thought she knew. Along the way, she'd find unexpected inspiration in an unlikely source, the mind of Elon Musk, a man famous for pushing boundaries and redefining limits. Susan's life was about to change. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And so begins the story of a woman who refused to accept aging quietly, who fought for her health, for knowledge, and for a future filled with vitality. What about you? What's the one thing that keeps you going when the world seems to be working against you? Let me know in the comments. Susan Marshall was more than just the woman who had recently suffered a mild heart attack. She was a story, a tapestry woven from decades of love, loss, resilience, and quiet determination. To understand where Susan was now, struggling to make sense of her health and the vitamins she had trusted, you had to look back into the life she had lived. Born in 1962 in a small town just outside Atlanta, Susan grew up in a tight-knit community where neighbors knew each other by name, and front porches were places for deep conversations and evening laughter. Her parents, Robert and Elaine, were hard-working folks, her father a mechanic and her mother a school librarian, who instilled in Susan the values of education and perseverance. Susan was the kind of kid who loved to learn. From an early age, she devoured books on science, history, and even a bit of astronomy, fascinated by the stars. She dreamed of becoming a teacher, to inspire kids just like she had been inspired. By the time she graduated high school, Susan had won a scholarship to Georgia State University. College wasn't easy, balancing classes, part-time jobs, and the pressures of family expectations, but Susan excelled. She majored in education and was known for her patience and kindness. After graduation, she returned to her hometown to teach middle school science, a subject that had always fired her imagination. Her career was fulfilling, but life wasn't without its hardships. In her early 30s, Susan met and married David, a software engineer with a quick smile and a love of adventure. For a few years, life felt like a dream. They had a daughter, Emma, who quickly became the center of their world. But as many do, tragedy found its way into Susan's life. When Emma was just 10, David was diagnosed with cancer. The disease took him in less than 2 years. Susan found herself suddenly widowed, a single mother carrying the weight of grief and responsibility. Those years were brutal. The long nights spent comforting a frightened child, the early mornings juggling 2 jobs to keep the household running, and the quiet moments alone when the tears came unbidden. Susan's health began to falter, not just physically, but emotionally. Still, she persevered. She leaned on her friends and her community, never letting herself fall too deep into despair. "You have to be strong for Emma," she told herself every day. For her, and for yourself. This strength became the foundation of Susan's identity. She poured herself into her work, tutoring students after school, volunteering at the local library, and making sure Emma had everything she needed. But somewhere along the way, Susan started feeling tired, more tired than just physical exhaustion. Her energy dipped, and small aches and pains became constant companions. It was during this time that Susan started paying closer attention to her health. Friends in her book club would talk about vitamins and supplements, promising better energy, stronger bones, and sharper minds. The more Susan listened, the more she wanted to believe that these little pills could be her secret weapon against the slow creep of age. For years, she followed the advice of magazines and late-night infomercials, buying multivitamins, calcium tablets, fish oil capsules, and anything else that seemed promising. She was careful, reading labels and even consulting her doctor occasionally. Yet the fatigue persisted. The aches sometimes worsened. Still, she kept taking them, thinking maybe it just took time. Her daughter Emma worried. "Mom, maybe you should slow down and see a specialist," she urged one afternoon over coffee. But Susan brushed it off, not wanting to admit that maybe, after all she'd been through, her body was starting to betray her. In the quiet moments, Susan wondered what aging really meant. Was it supposed to feel like this? Was this the normal everyone talked about? Or was there more she could do? She wasn't ready to accept that decline was inevitable. One of Susan's most cherished relationships was with her best friend Linda. They met in college and had stayed close ever since, even though life had taken them on different paths. Linda was a retired nurse who had recently moved closer to Susan. Their conversations often revolved around health, family, and the latest news on wellness. Linda was the one who first planted the seed of doubt about vitamins. "You know, Susan," Linda said one day while they were gardening together, "not all supplements are created equal. Some might even be dangerous, especially for folks our age." Susan had laughed it off. "But they're supposed to help, right? That's what the commercials say." Linda shook her head. "That's marketing. Real science is different. You should be careful." This conversation stuck with Susan, but it wasn't until the heart scare that she took it seriously. She realized that despite her best intentions, she didn't know nearly enough about what she was putting into her body. Susan's relationship with her daughter Emma was a beacon through it all. Emma, now 32, was a nurse practitioner living in Atlanta. She worried about her mom constantly and pushed for regular checkups and healthier habits. "I want you around for a long time, Mom," Emma said during one of their phone calls. "Not just for me, but for yourself." Susan felt the truth of those words deep down. She wanted to be strong, healthy, and vibrant, not just a shadow of her former self. But beneath the surface, Susan also wrestled with loneliness. Widowed and with Emma busy with her own life, Susan often found herself feeling isolated. Her social circle was small, and health problems made it harder to keep up. Her heart attack was a shock, but it was also a turning point, a signal from her body that something had to change. That night in the hospital, after Dr. Patel's warnings about vitamins and supplements, Susan lay awake thinking. She had always been cautious, but had she really been informed? Or was she just another consumer lost in a sea of conflicting information? Her mind flashed back to her childhood, to her parents' simple wisdom: trust what you know, but always ask questions. Susan decided then that she would become her own advocate. She would learn everything she could about nutrition, supplements, and health after 60. She would not settle for surface answers or marketing hype. Her journey was not just about surviving, it was about thriving. Susan's story was not unique. Millions of Americans over 60 struggle daily with similar doubts and decisions. But her determination to find the truth, to separate fact from fiction, would lead her down a path that challenged conventions and empowered her in ways she never expected. So who was Susan, really? She was a fighter. A seeker of truth. A mother who refused to give up. A woman ready to rewrite what aging meant for her. And this was only the beginning. What about you? Who's the person that inspires you to keep pushing forward? Drop their name in the comments below. Let's celebrate those who lift us up. Susan's newfound determination to take control of her health was fueled by a mix of hope and uncertainty. She was ready to dive into research, ask tough questions, and make changes. But as she quickly discovered, the path wasn't simple, or straightforward. One of the first challenges Susan faced was the overwhelming amount of conflicting information about vitamins and supplements for people over 60. Her late-night Google searches brought up countless articles, blog posts, and videos. Some experts praised vitamin D and calcium for bone health, others warned about the risks of oversupplementation. There were debates about antioxidants like vitamin E and beta-carotene. Even omega-3, often heralded as a heart hero, came with its own controversies. It was dizzying. Susan felt a familiar frustration rise, the same one she'd felt when trying to navigate her widowhood and single motherhood. How could she separate truth from hype? How could she be sure what she was doing was right? Her best friend Linda tried to help. Over coffee, Linda explained that some supplements might interfere with medications or cause side effects that weren't widely discussed. Sometimes the things meant to help us can hurt us if we don't know what we're doing, Linda cautioned. But Susan's doctor, Dr. Patel, was even more direct during her follow-up visit. "Susan, I want to be clear. Some supplements can increase your risk of bleeding, especially if you're on blood thinners. Others can raise your blood pressure or cause liver damage if taken in excess." Susan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the complexity settle on her shoulders. The rising conflict wasn't just external, it was internal, too. For years, Susan had taken vitamins like a safety net. She believed they were helping, that every pill was a small investment in her future. Now, she was forced to question everything. What if her trust had been misplaced? What if some of the vitamins had made her heart condition worse? The doubts gnawed at her. She even felt a bit betrayed, by the companies that marketed those supplements, by the friends who encouraged her to take them, and even by herself for not questioning sooner. It was a storm of emotions. Fear, confusion, frustration, and a deep desire for clarity. Susan's daughter Emma noticed the toll it was taking. "Mom, I know it's confusing," Emma said gently during one of their video calls. "But you don't have to figure it all out alone. Let's make a plan together. We can consult a nutritionist, review your medications, and get blood tests to see what you really need." Susan appreciated Emma's support, but part of her still felt overwhelmed. She wanted answers now, not more tests or experts telling her, maybe. Meanwhile, Susan's social circle added more pressure. At her weekly book club, a conversation about supplements quickly turned into a debate. Some women swore by their daily doses of magnesium or turmeric. Others shared horror stories of side effects. A few claimed they'd stopped all supplements after consulting their doctors. Susan listened quietly, feeling more alone than ever. To complicate matters, Susan's own body was sending mixed signals. Some days, she felt energized and hopeful, other days, fatigued and frustrated. She struggled to keep up with her usual activities, questioning whether she was doing more harm than good. Then came an unexpected twist. One morning, Susan's phone rang. It was a call from a local health seminar organizer inviting her to attend a talk titled, "Supplements Over 60, What You Must Know." The speaker? A well-known nutrition expert with a background in aging research. Susan hesitated but decided to go. At the seminar, the expert delivered a candid presentation that challenged many popular beliefs. She highlighted 4 vitamins that people over 60 should avoid due to potential risks, and 4 others that could provide real benefits when taken correctly. Susan's ears perked up as she heard about vitamins she'd never thought twice about, how high doses of vitamin A could cause bone loss, how excessive vitamin E might increase stroke risk, and how certain supplements could interact dangerously with common medications. On the other hand, the expert recommended vitamins like B12 for energy and brain health, vitamin D for immune support, and magnesium for muscle function, vitamins Susan hadn't been taking consistently, if at all. This seminar was a breakthrough for Susan. It was both alarming and enlightening. For the first time, she felt armed with facts instead of fear. Back home, Susan created a spreadsheet to track her current supplements, medications, and the new recommendations. It was a small step, but it gave her a sense of control. She shared the information with Emma, who helped her set up a meeting with a registered dietitian for a personalized plan. But the conflicts weren't over. At her next doctor's appointment, Susan brought up the new vitamin plan. Dr. Patel listened carefully but warned, even beneficial supplements can have side effects or interact with your heart medications. "We'll need to monitor you closely." Susan appreciated his caution but sometimes felt caught between advice from experts, family, and what her own body seemed to say. Her emotional highs and lows continued. Sometimes she was filled with hope, thinking she was finally on the right path. Other times, setbacks like lingering fatigue or side effects from a new supplement made her question if she'd made a mistake. Through it all, Susan realized that the journey toward better health was not a straight line. It was filled with twists and turns, hope and setbacks, clarity and confusion. But she also realized she wasn't alone. Millions of people over 60 faced the same struggles, balancing good intentions with complex realities. Susan's story was becoming a testament to resilience in the face of uncertainty. She was learning that rising conflicts weren't signs of failure, they were part of the process. Have you ever faced conflicting advice about your health? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments. Let's support each other. Susan's life was about to take a surprising turn, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about aging, health, and the vitamins she trusted. What began as a simple quest for better wellness quickly evolved into a strange and eye-opening journey, one filled with unexpected discoveries and tough lessons. It all started a week after Susan's appointment with the registered dietitian, Maria. Maria was warm but direct, armed with years of experience helping people over 60 navigate the confusing world of nutrition and supplements. She asked Susan detailed questions about her diet, lifestyle, and current supplements, then carefully reviewed her medications. After a thorough discussion, Maria made some bold recommendations. She suggested Susan stop taking certain vitamins immediately, like her high-dose vitamin A and unregulated herbal blends. Instead, Maria advised Susan to start a few clinically backed supplements tailored specifically for women over 60, vitamin B12, vitamin D3, magnesium, and omega-3 fatty acids. Susan listened intently but also felt overwhelmed. Stopping familiar supplements felt risky, even though Maria explained the potential dangers clearly. Could she really trust this new approach after years of self-experimentation? What if she made a mistake? That evening, Susan sat down with her daughter Emma and laid out the new plan. Emma was encouraging but cautious. "Mom, I'm proud of you for taking charge. But let's make sure we monitor everything carefully. We'll keep track of how you feel, any side effects, and do regular blood work." Susan nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she wasn't just guessing. She had a team, Maria, Dr. Patel, and Emma, helping her navigate this complex road. The next few weeks brought a mixture of hope and challenge. Susan started taking the new supplements religiously. She kept a daily journal, noting her energy levels, mood, and any physical changes. At first, it was difficult to adjust. The absence of familiar pills felt strange, and her body protested slightly with mild headaches and digestive discomfort. But then, something unexpected happened. About 2 weeks into the new regimen, Susan woke up one morning feeling lighter, less foggy, less achy. Her usual mid-morning slump didn't hit as hard. She found herself more focused during her morning walk and even looked forward to cooking healthy meals inspired by Maria's nutrition tips. It was a small victory, but it felt huge to Susan. For years, she'd battled fatigue and uncertainty, and now she was experiencing a glimpse of the vitality she'd almost forgotten. Encouraged by these changes, Susan decided to dive deeper. She began attending local health workshops and reading scientific studies on aging and supplements recommended by trusted sources. She discovered that vitamin B12 deficiency was common in older adults and could cause fatigue and memory problems if left untreated. Vitamin D3, she learned, played a crucial role in immune function and bone health, especially for women past menopause. Magnesium helped with muscle cramps and sleep quality, while omega-3 fatty acids supported heart and brain health. Armed with this knowledge, Susan felt empowered. But her journey wasn't just physical. It also became a profound emotional and psychological experience. One afternoon, while tending her small garden, Susan reflected on how much her perspective had shifted. She realized that aging wasn't a passive decline but a complex, ongoing process that required active engagement and learning. She also recognized the importance of community. How sharing experiences and advice with others made her feel less alone. Susan started a support group at her local community center for women over 60 who wanted to learn about health and wellness. The group grew quickly, filled with women eager to exchange stories, tips, and encouragement. Through these meetings, Susan met Gloria, a vibrant 70-year-old retired teacher who had also struggled with confusing supplement advice. Gloria shared her own journey, how she had almost stopped taking medications after a bad reaction to a popular, natural, supplement. Their friendship became another source of strength for Susan. However, not all moments were easy. During a routine checkup, Dr. Patel expressed concern about some of Susan's blood test results. Although most markers were improving, her kidney function had slightly declined, a possible side effect of supplements or an unrelated issue. Susan felt a familiar wave of anxiety. Was she pushing too hard? Was this new path putting her at risk? Dr. Patel reassured her. "We'll keep monitoring this closely. Sometimes, adjustments are needed. The key is to listen to your body and communicate openly with your healthcare team." This moment underscored the complexity of Susan's journey. It wasn't about quick fixes or miracle cures. It was about balance, vigilance, and adapting as she learned more. As the months passed, Susan's health improved steadily, but more importantly, her confidence grew. She was no longer a passive recipient of advice, she was an active participant in her health. Her story began to resonate beyond her immediate circle. Local news outlets interviewed Susan about her health journey, and she started a blog to share evidence-based information and personal reflections. Her message was clear: aging didn't have to mean surrender. With the right knowledge and support, it could be a time of growth and empowerment. Susan's journey took an unexpected twist when she discovered a study connecting certain supplements with Elon Musk's recent statements about health optimization for older adults. Musk had publicly criticized popular vitamins some seniors blindly took, emphasizing a personalized, science-based approach. Susan was intrigued. Here was a high-profile figure reinforcing what she had learned through trial and error. That one-size-fits-all solutions often fell short. This alignment of her personal experience with cutting-edge ideas gave Susan a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that her journey, once chaotic and confusing, was part of a larger movement toward smarter aging. Have you ever had a moment when a new piece of information changed everything for you? What was it, and how did it shape your choices? Share your story below, your insights might inspire someone else. Susan sat quietly in her living room, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Her fingers trembled slightly as she clutched a thick envelope, the latest lab results from her doctor. The moment she had been dreading for weeks had finally arrived. She took a deep breath and unfolded the papers. The numbers told a complicated story. On one hand, her vitamin B12 levels were finally in a healthy range. Her vitamin D had improved significantly. Her cholesterol was stable, even trending downward thanks to her improved diet and supplements. But then came the unsettling part: her liver enzymes were elevated, a potential sign of stress or damage. And her kidney function, though stable, was borderline concerning. Susan felt the familiar rush of fear. Had her new supplement regimen, meant to heal her, instead been harming her? Her phone buzzed, an incoming call from Dr. Patel. Susan's heart pounded as she answered. "Susan, I've reviewed your results. I want to be honest, there's cause for concern," Dr. Patel said gently. "Some supplements can affect liver and kidney function, especially when combined with medications. We need to adjust your plan immediately." The conversation left Susan reeling. Just when she had felt hopeful and in control, reality slammed into her like a wave. That evening, Susan sat down with her daughter Emma. Tears welled up in her eyes as she shared the news. "I thought I was doing everything right," Susan whispered, voice cracking. "But now, I don't know what to believe anymore." Emma reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Mom, you're not alone in this. We'll get through it together." Susan's feelings of despair soon gave way to determination. She knew she had to dig deeper, to uncover the truth about these supplements and how they interacted with her unique body chemistry. Her next step was to meet with Maria, the dietitian who had guided her earlier. Maria was equally concerned but optimistic. "Susan, this is why personalized care is so important," Maria explained. "Everyone's body reacts differently. Supplements aren't magic pills, they're tools that must be used carefully. Together, they revamped Susan's supplement plan, cutting out anything potentially harmful and focusing on natural food sources and moderate, evidence-backed vitamins. Despite the setbacks, Susan refused to give up. She saw this as a crucial lesson in self-advocacy and resilience. Then came a breakthrough that shocked her. A study published by a leading research institute revealed that common supplements like high-dose vitamin A and E, often marketed aggressively to seniors, were linked to increased risks of fractures and strokes. The findings aligned eerily with her own experience and the warnings Dr. Patel had given her. This revelation was a turning point. Susan realized how easy it was for even well-meaning people to fall victim to misleading marketing and incomplete information. But just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a ray of hope emerged. Her new, carefully monitored regimen began showing promising results within weeks. Her energy returned, her mood brightened, and her medical markers began to stabilize. Susan's story became a beacon for many in her community. Through her blog and support group, she shared her emotional highs and lows, the setbacks, and the victories. Her vulnerability resonated deeply. One blog post, titled, "When Hope Meets Reality, My Journey with Supplements Over 60, went viral. Readers flooded her inbox with messages of gratitude and their own stories of confusion and perseverance. Susan's emotional climax had transformed from personal crisis into collective empowerment. At a conference on aging and health, Susan was invited to speak. Standing before a room of doctors, researchers, and seniors, she shared her story candidly. "I learned the hard way that aging is not about blindly following trends," she said. "It's about listening to your body, seeking expert advice, and being willing to change course when necessary." Her words sparked deep reflection. Many nodded in agreement, moved by her honesty and courage. Susan ended her talk with a challenge: let's demand better research, clearer guidance, and more personalized care for people over 60. Because this journey, our journey, deserves nothing less. The emotional climax of Susan's story underscored a powerful truth: aging with dignity and health is possible, but it requires awareness, courage, and a community willing to support each other. Have you ever faced a moment when hope and reality collided? How did you find your way through? Share your thoughts below and join the conversation. Susan sat by the window, gazing out at the garden she had nurtured over the years. The seasons had changed, leaves turning gold and red, reminding her of the cycles of life, the endings and new beginnings. After months of uncertainty, setbacks, and discoveries, she finally felt a calm she hadn't known in years. The journey had not been easy. From the initial shock of her heart diagnosis to the overwhelming maze of supplement advice, from the emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment to the surprising friendships and newfound purpose, Susan had grown in ways she never expected. Her relationship with health had transformed completely. No longer did she chase every trendy vitamin or blindly trust advertising. Instead, she approached her well-being with informed caution and respect for her body's signals. One morning, Susan woke up feeling stronger and more energized than she had in a long time. Her doctor's recent blood tests confirmed the improvements: her liver and kidney function were stable, her heart was stronger, and her vitamin levels balanced. But perhaps the most profound change was internal. Susan had learned to be patient with herself, to accept the imperfect process of aging, and to find joy in small victories. She reflected on the lessons she had gathered along the way. First, knowledge is power, but only if it's trusted and personalized. Understanding how her body worked and what it truly needed made all the difference. She was grateful for the experts who helped her sift through the noise. Second, community is vital. The support of her daughter Emma, her friend Linda, her dietitian Maria, and new friends like Gloria had been pillars of strength. Sharing stories and struggles lightened the burden. Third, resilience is a daily practice. Setbacks didn't mean failure. Each challenge was an opportunity to learn and grow. Susan's blog had blossomed into a vibrant platform where seniors exchanged tips, voiced concerns, and inspired one another to pursue healthier lives. She was proud that her story had sparked a movement of awareness and empowerment. Looking back, Susan realized that her experience was more than a personal health saga. It was a reflection of a larger truth about aging in America. How many people faced confusion and misinformation about supplements, how difficult it was to find trustworthy guidance, and how critical it was to approach health with curiosity, care, and courage. Her involvement in the local community center's wellness programs grew deeper. She led workshops, invited experts, and helped design resources tailored for older adults. One chilly autumn evening, Susan received an invitation that took her by surprise, a request to collaborate on a nationwide campaign educating seniors about the supplements they should avoid and the ones proven to help, drawing inspiration from Elon Musk's recent public comments about optimizing health over 60. Susan accepted enthusiastically, eager to bring her voice and experience to a wider audience. She knew the road ahead would still have twists and challenges, but now she was ready. Her closing thoughts in her latest blog post summed up everything she wanted her readers to understand. Life over 60 is not a decline. It's a new chapter filled with wisdom, challenges, and opportunities. By staying informed, listening to our bodies, and supporting one another, we can redefine what it means to age well. Remember, it's never too late to start fresh. As the sun set, Susan smiled. The journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. What's one lesson you've learned on your own health journey? Share your insight below and let's continue this conversation, because every story matters. Susan's living room was buzzing with activity, a sharp contrast to the quiet evenings she was used to. Around her sat a group of women from her community support group, some newly joined, others veterans of the health journey. The room was filled with warmth, laughter, and a shared sense of purpose. Tonight wasn't just a casual gathering. Susan was about to lead her first major workshop, an event she hoped would make a real difference in how her peers understood supplements and aging. She glanced at her notes, then looked up at the eager faces. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice steady but heartfelt. "I want to start with a question. Have you ever felt confused or overwhelmed by the countless vitamins and supplements marketed to us as we age?" Hands shot up around the room. "I think that's all of us," Susan smiled. "Me too." She told them about her own journey, the highs, the lows, the mistakes, and the lessons learned. She described how she had once taken dozens of pills a day, trusting marketing and anecdotal advice, only to discover some were doing more harm than good. Susan spoke about the supplements Elon Musk had recently discussed publicly, emphasizing which vitamins are essential after 60, and which can be harmful if taken without proper guidance. As she spoke, Susan noticed nods of recognition and eyes widening in surprise. The room felt alive with connection. Then came the most important part, practical advice. Susan shared clear, science-backed recommendations for supplements to start, such as vitamin B12, vitamin D3, magnesium, and omega-3s, and why these were crucial for heart, bone, and brain health. She also warned about the supplements to avoid, like excessive vitamin A and certain herbal blends that might interact dangerously with medications. Her audience was eager to ask questions, and Susan was ready. The discussion became a dynamic exchange, with stories and concerns flowing freely. One woman named Claire spoke up. "I've been taking a multivitamin for years, but I'm not sure if it's really helping. How do I know if it's right for me?" Susan smiled. "Great question. It's important to get blood tests and talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian. Supplements aren't one size fits all. What works for me might not work for you." Claire nodded thoughtfully, jotting down notes. The workshop ended with everyone feeling energized and hopeful. Susan's heart swelled with pride. This was why she had started the support group, to create a safe space where women could learn, share, and support each other in their health journeys. In the weeks that followed, Susan received messages from attendees expressing gratitude and sharing how they had started making small but impactful changes. Some had stopped risky supplements, others had scheduled doctor appointments to discuss their vitamin levels. One message, however, stood out. It was from Gloria, her close friend from the support group, who wrote, "Susan, after your workshop, I felt inspired to get a full health checkup. Turns out, my vitamin D was dangerously low. Thanks to you, I'm getting the treatment I need." Susan's eyes welled up. This was the real victory, not just changing her own life, but touching others. At home, Susan's daughter Emma noticed the change in her mother. "Mom, you seem more energized and focused than ever. This new purpose really suits you." Susan laughed. "It's true. Helping others keeps me going. It's like I've found a new mission." Inspired, Susan began collaborating with local healthcare providers to organize free health screenings and educational seminars for seniors. The community center's director praised her efforts. "Susan, your passion and knowledge are making a difference. We're lucky to have you." Susan remained humble. She knew her journey was far from over, but the progress was undeniable. Her blog readership grew steadily, and she started receiving invitations to speak at regional health conferences. At one such event, Susan met Dr. Elena Harris, a gerontologist researching the effects of supplements on aging populations. Their conversation sparked new ideas for Susan's advocacy work. Dr. Harris invited her to participate in a study examining personalized supplement plans for seniors. Susan eagerly accepted, excited to contribute to the growing body of scientific knowledge. Through this partnership, Susan realized how important it was to bridge the gap between scientific research and everyday people. Knowledge wasn't enough if it stayed confined to labs and journals, it needed to reach those who could benefit most. Her experience had transformed her from a confused consumer to a community leader and health advocate. Reflecting on her journey, Susan often thought back to that early question she posed at her workshop, about feeling overwhelmed and confused. She understood now that confusion wasn't a sign of weakness or failure. It was a natural response to a complex world, especially when it came to health after 60. What mattered was the willingness to seek out the truth, to learn, and to share that knowledge with others. As the chapter closed, Susan felt a deep sense of gratitude, for the challenges she had faced, for the people who supported her, and for the opportunity to make a difference. What's one way you've helped someone else on their health journey? Or maybe you've learned something valuable from a friend or family member. Share your story and let's celebrate the power of connection. The crisp air of early winter settled over the town as Susan walked through the snow-dusted park. Her steps were steady, her mind clear after months of growth and renewed purpose. Yet, deep inside, a quiet apprehension gnawed at her. The health journey she had embraced was far from over. A routine checkup loomed, one she both anticipated and dreaded. The improvements in her blood work had been encouraging, but Susan knew aging often brought unpredictable twists. She reminded herself. Knowledge and resilience would be her allies. Back home, Susan prepared a cup of chamomile tea and sat down with her journal. She wrote, "No matter the outcome, I will face it with courage. This is just another chapter." 2 days later, the call came. "Ms. Harper. This is Dr. Patel's office. We'd like to schedule some additional tests based on your recent labs." The voice was calm, but Susan's heart skipped a beat. At the appointment, Dr. Patel explained the situation carefully. "Susan, your vitamin levels remain stable, which is excellent," he began. "However, we noticed some irregularities in your thyroid function tests. It could be early-stage hypothyroidism." Susan frowned. "What does that mean for me?" "It means your thyroid isn't producing enough hormones, which can cause fatigue, weight gain, and mood changes. It's manageable with medication and lifestyle adjustments, but it's another piece of the puzzle we need to address." Susan nodded slowly, absorbing the news. This new diagnosis felt like a curveball, a reminder that even with careful management, the body's needs evolve over time. In the days that followed, Susan researched hypothyroidism extensively. She connected with online support groups and consulted her doctors. She realized that many seniors faced similar challenges but that awareness was often low. Determined not to let this setback define her, Susan adjusted her supplement plan, incorporating iodine-rich foods and following her doctor's medication regimen. Emma was a constant source of encouragement. "Mom, you've handled everything with such grace. I'm proud of you." Susan smiled, grateful for her daughter's support. But the emotional toll was real. She experienced moments of frustration and self-doubt. "Why me?" she wondered aloud. "After all the progress, why another diagnosis?" One evening, she confided in Gloria over the phone. "Life keeps throwing challenges our way," Gloria said softly. "But remember, each challenge is a chance to learn and become stronger. You're not alone." That conversation renewed Susan's spirit. She decided to write a new blog post titled, "When Hope Meets New Challenges, Navigating Thyroid Health After 60. In it, she shared her honest feelings, fear, uncertainty, and determination, hoping to help others facing similar news. The response was overwhelming. Readers thanked her for her openness and for highlighting an often overlooked condition. Susan also integrated this new knowledge into her workshops, educating her community about thyroid health, symptoms to watch for, and the importance of regular screenings. She invited Dr. Harris to speak at one session, bringing expert insight that deepened the group's understanding. Meanwhile, Susan's personal health continued to improve with medication and lifestyle tweaks. Her energy slowly returned, and the fog of fatigue lifted. Yet, Susan knew this journey was ongoing. Aging was not a destination but a lifelong process filled with evolving needs. Reflecting on this phase, Susan realized that hope wasn't the absence of challenges but the courage to face them head-on. Her story was no longer just about vitamins or supplements, it was about embracing the complexity of aging with an open heart and mind. As winter deepened, Susan found solace in small rituals, morning walks, journaling, and quiet moments with Emma. She learned to celebrate progress, however incremental, and to seek joy amidst uncertainty. Her resilience inspired those around her, creating ripples of positivity. One afternoon, Susan received an email from a reader named Martha. "Thank you for sharing your journey. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism last year and felt isolated and scared. Your story reminds me I'm not alone and gives me hope." Susan replied warmly, grateful for the connection. These moments reinforced her belief in the power of storytelling and community. Susan stands at a crossroads, not defined by a diagnosis but empowered by knowledge, supported by friends and family, and ready for whatever the future holds. Have you ever faced an unexpected health challenge? How did you cope? Share your story and help others find strength. The snow outside had melted into soft spring rain, and with it came a renewed sense of hope for Susan. After the shock of her thyroid diagnosis and the emotional roller coaster that followed, she was slowly finding her footing again. But little did she know, the real turning point in her journey was yet to come, one that involved an unexpected ally and a lesson about the power of human connection. Susan's days had settled into a comforting rhythm of doctor appointments, workshops, and blogging. But the loneliness that sometimes crept in during quiet evenings reminded her how fragile the support system could be, especially as she navigated uncharted health territory. One afternoon, while attending a local health seminar, Susan noticed a familiar face, Michael, a volunteer coordinator at the community center. He was known for his infectious enthusiasm and dedication to senior wellness programs. Susan had only met him briefly before, but today something felt different. After the seminar, Michael approached her. "Susan, I've been following your blog," he said with a warm smile. "Your honesty and passion are inspiring. I'd love to collaborate with you on some upcoming wellness events." Susan felt a spark of excitement. Collaborations meant new ideas, new energy, and perhaps most importantly, new friendships. Over the next weeks, Michael and Susan worked closely to design interactive workshops focused on personalized supplement plans and healthy lifestyle habits for people over 60. Michael brought a fresh perspective, blending technology and social media outreach to engage a broader audience. Together, they created a series called Empower 60+, combining expert talks, fitness sessions, and cooking demos tailored to seniors' unique needs. Susan found herself energized not only by the work but also by Michael's unwavering positivity. He reminded her that even in later life, there was so much room for growth, learning, and joy. One rainy evening after a planning meeting, Susan and Michael shared coffee at a nearby cafe. Their conversation drifted from health topics to life stories. Susan opened up about her fears, her family, and the challenges she'd faced since turning 60. Michael listened attentively, sharing his own journey caring for aging parents and witnessing the struggles many seniors face. Sometimes, Michael said quietly, it's the connections we build that give us strength, not just the supplements or exercise. Susan nodded, realizing how much this friendship meant to her, an unexpected ally in a season of change. Meanwhile, Susan's workshops were gaining momentum. Attendance swelled as word spread about the practical, science-backed advice and the welcoming atmosphere she and Michael fostered. Susan incorporated her recent thyroid health experience into the curriculum, emphasizing the importance of regular health screenings and being attuned to one's body. A turning point came when Susan invited Dr. Elena Harris to join the Empower 60+ series as a guest speaker. Dr. Harris captivated the audience with her research on aging and supplements, answering questions with clarity and compassion. After the session, many attendees expressed relief and gratitude. For the first time, they felt empowered to take control of their health with informed choices. Susan's blog traffic surged, with messages pouring in from readers across the country. Many shared their own struggles with misinformation, medication side effects, and the emotional toll of aging. One message stood out, from a woman named Linda, who wrote, "Your story helped me realize I'm not alone. I'm starting to make changes that my doctor recommended but that I'd been too scared to try." Susan replied immediately, her heart full. These connections were the lifeblood of her mission. But life, as always, held surprises. One afternoon, Susan received a call from Emma, her daughter. "Mom, Grandma's not doing well. She's been hospitalized." Susan's breath caught. Her mother, Ruth, had always been a source of strength for her. Now, the roles felt reversed. Without hesitation, Susan drove to the hospital. Seeing her mother frail yet determined stirred deep emotions. Ruth smiled weakly. "You've become quite the health advocate," she said softly. "I'm proud of you." Susan took Ruth's hand. "We'll get through this together." The next weeks were a whirlwind of hospital visits, consultations, and caregiving decisions. Susan realized how vital her knowledge and network had become, not just for herself, but for her family. She coordinated with doctors to optimize Ruth's medication and nutrition, drawing on her experience with supplements and thyroid management. Michael was a steady presence, offering help with errands and emotional support. Through this challenge, Susan discovered the true meaning of community, the give and take of support that sustains us all. Her workshops adapted to include caregivers, recognizing their crucial role and unique stresses. Susan's blog featured stories of family caregiving, balancing self-care, and maintaining hope during difficult times. In quiet moments, Susan reflected on her journey, the ups and downs, the surprises and setbacks. She understood that aging wasn't a solitary path but a shared experience, shaped by relationships, resilience, and the courage to face the unexpected. As spring blossomed outside, Susan felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just as a health advocate, but as a daughter, friend, and community member. Her story was becoming a testament to the power of connection and the unexpected allies who help us carry on. Who has been your unexpected ally in your health or life journey? How did they change your path? Share your story and celebrate those who lift us up. Spring had fully arrived, bringing with it blooming flowers and longer days. But for Susan, the light outside contrasted sharply with the shadows stirring inside. Just when she thought her journey was steadying, memories and emotions from her past began to resurface, challenging the strength she had built. It started subtly. A fleeting thought here, a sudden pang of sadness there. One afternoon, while preparing for an upcoming Empower 60+ seminar, Susan found herself staring blankly at her laptop screen. The words she'd planned to say felt distant, as if a fog had settled over her mind. Later, while sharing tea with Michael, she confided, "I don't know why, but I've been feeling overwhelmed, like old fears and regrets are creeping back." Michael nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes, healing isn't just physical or mental, it's emotional too. Have you considered talking to someone? A counselor or therapist? Susan hesitated. Growing up in a generation where such conversations were often hushed, she wasn't sure opening up felt safe. But she also knew that bottling up feelings hadn't served her well in the past. That night, Susan sat with her journal, writing about her childhood in a small town, her parents' high expectations, and the pressures she had internalized. She wrote about moments of loneliness, self-doubt, and the silent struggle to prove herself worthy. One memory stood out sharply, her father's stern voice reprimanding her for not meeting academic goals, and her mother's quiet tears behind closed doors. Susan realized these old wounds still influenced her self-worth, fueling a relentless drive for perfection that sometimes left her exhausted. The next day, she made an appointment with a therapist recommended by a friend, a woman named Dr. Miller, known for her compassionate approach to aging and emotional health. At their first session, Susan was nervous but determined. She spoke cautiously at first, then gradually opened up about her fears, regrets, and the weight of expectations she'd carried all her life. Dr. Miller listened without judgment. "Susan, the past shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. Healing comes from acknowledging those parts of yourself and learning to treat them with kindness." This idea resonated deeply. Susan realized that self-compassion was a crucial missing piece in her journey. Over several weeks, therapy sessions helped Susan confront painful memories and recognize patterns that no longer served her. She learned tools to manage anxiety and negative self-talk, replacing them with affirmations rooted in self-love and acceptance. Meanwhile, her work with Empower 60+ continued to thrive, now enriched by her growing emotional awareness. During one workshop, Susan shared parts of her story, not just about supplements or physical health but about emotional resilience and the importance of mental well-being. The group responded with empathy and shared their own struggles, creating an atmosphere of trust and vulnerability. One attendee, Martha, approached Susan after the session. "Thank you for being so honest," she said. "I've been dealing with depression for years but felt too ashamed to talk about it. You've given me hope." Susan smiled warmly. We all carry unseen burdens. The more we share, the lighter the load becomes. At home, Susan's relationship with Emma deepened as they talked more openly about feelings and challenges. Emma confided about her own struggles balancing career and family, and Susan offered support and encouragement. Their bond became a source of comfort and strength for both. Susan also reached out to Gloria, who was dealing with health setbacks of her own. Their weekly calls became a lifeline, a reminder that they were in this together. As the season shifted to early summer, Susan felt a subtle but powerful transformation within herself. She was no longer just the determined health advocate but a woman embracing all facets of her humanity, strength and vulnerability, hope and fear, past and present. One evening, she stood in her garden, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of pink and orange. She whispered to herself, "I am enough." This simple affirmation carried the weight of years of struggle and the promise of a new chapter. Her journey had taught her that aging wasn't just about managing vitamins or health conditions, it was about growing into a fuller, more authentic self. And sometimes, that growth meant confronting the past with courage and compassion. What part of your past has shaped who you are today? How have you learned to embrace or heal from it? Share your journey and inspire others to do the same. The warm glow of summer sunlight streamed through the windows of Susan's cozy living room as she sat quietly, sipping her morning coffee. The peace was a sharp contrast to the turmoil that had been simmering beneath the surface in her family life. After confronting her own past and embracing emotional healing, Susan realized there was one relationship she had avoided addressing for far too long, the strained connection with her sister, Diane. Their relationship had always been complicated. Growing up, Susan had admired Diane's confidence and charm, but as they got older, jealousy and misunderstandings began to create distance. Over the years, unresolved arguments and unspoken resentments grew like a wall between them, one that neither dared to break down. Susan remembered the last time they'd spoken, a terse phone call over a minor family disagreement that quickly escalated into bitterness and silence. Since then, years had passed with little contact. Now, armed with a newfound perspective from therapy and self-reflection, Susan felt ready to face this painful chapter. She drafted a message to Diane, carefully choosing her words. "Hi Diane, I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking a lot about us lately and would like to reconnect. Life is too short for old grudges. If you're open to it, maybe we could meet for coffee and talk." For days, the message sat unsent in her drafts. Doubts crept in. What if she rejected me? What if things get worse? Finally, Susan hit send. The reply came sooner than she expected. "Hi Susan, I appreciate your message. I've missed you too. Let's meet next Saturday at the cafe on Main Street." Susan's heart fluttered with nervous anticipation. That weekend, she arrived early, choosing a quiet corner table. When Diane walked in, their eyes met, a mix of hesitation, sadness, and hope. The first few minutes were awkward, filled with tentative smiles and small talk. But soon, the walls began to crumble. Susan shared her journey over the past year, her health struggles, therapy, and the lessons she'd learned about forgiveness and self-compassion. Diane listened quietly, then opened up about her own battles, loneliness after her divorce, fear of being forgotten, and regrets over their distance. For the first time in years, they spoke honestly and without judgment. Tears came easily as they acknowledged the pain they'd both caused and endured. "I never wanted to lose you," Diane said, reaching across the table to hold Susan's hand. "I feel the same," Susan replied, relief washing over her. That meeting marked the beginning of rebuilding trust and healing their bond. In the weeks that followed, their communication deepened. They called each other regularly, shared memories, and made plans to attend family events together. Susan realized how much she had missed the unique companionship of a sister, someone who knew her history and understood her heart. This newfound relationship brought an unexpected gift, the power of forgiveness to free both herself and Diane from the past. Susan also noticed changes in her own behavior. She was more patient, less reactive, and more willing to express vulnerability. These shifts rippled into other areas of her life. At her workshops, she began incorporating discussions about emotional health and family dynamics, recognizing how crucial these were to overall well-being. One afternoon, Susan received a message from a workshop attendee named James. "I'm dealing with a difficult relationship with my adult son," James wrote. "Your talk about forgiveness gave me hope. I'm going to try reaching out." Susan replied, encouraging him to be patient and gentle with himself and his son. Her story had become a beacon not just for her own healing but for others grappling with fractured relationships. Meanwhile, Susan's mother, Ruth, was gradually recovering from her hospitalization. The experience had brought Susan and her mother even closer. Ruth often told Susan how proud she was of the woman she had become, strong, compassionate, and wise. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching fireflies, Ruth said, "Family isn't always perfect, but it's where love starts. You've helped me understand that better than I ever could." Susan smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Her journey wasn't just about vitamins, supplements, or even health conditions. It was about the ties that bind us, the wounds that heal, and the love that endures. As summer days stretched lazily into evening, Susan felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she was supported by family, friends, and a community that believed in second chances. Have you ever had to rebuild a broken relationship? What helped you heal and move forward? Share your story and remind others that it's never too late to reconnect. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The summer sun poured through the windows of Susan's kitchen as she prepared breakfast, humming softly to herself. The past months had been filled with healing, physical, emotional, and relational, but Susan knew that the journey was far from over. Life, she had learned, rarely followed a smooth path, and her body was about to remind her of that in unexpected ways. A routine checkup turned into a new challenge. Dr. Harris had called Susan with the test results, her voice calm but serious. "Susan, your blood work shows some irregularities. Your vitamin D levels are dangerously low, and there are early signs of osteoporosis. We need to act quickly to prevent further bone loss." Susan sat down, the weight of the news settling over her like a cold fog. She had always considered herself relatively healthy, mindful about her supplements and diet. But now, faced with this new diagnosis, she felt vulnerable. Later that day, she confided in Michael during their weekly meeting. "I've been so focused on thyroid health, I didn't see this coming. It's like my body keeps finding new battles." Michael nodded empathetically. "It's tough, Susan. But remember, your journey is about adapting and learning. This is another step, not the end." Susan took his words to heart and began researching osteoporosis and vitamin D deficiency. She was determined to confront this new hurdle head-on. She consulted with Dr. Harris to devise a comprehensive plan, tailored supplements, weight-bearing exercises, and dietary changes rich in calcium and vitamin D. Her Empower 60+ workshops evolved to include these topics, with Susan inviting experts to speak on bone health and nutrition. One session, led by a renowned dietitian, sparked lively discussions among attendees, many of whom shared their own experiences with osteoporosis. Susan realized how common these issues were among seniors and how crucial awareness and prevention were. At home, Susan committed to a new exercise routine, including gentle yoga and walking, designed to strengthen bones without strain. The early days were challenging. Muscle soreness and fatigue tested her resolve, but she reminded herself of the importance of perseverance. She kept a journal, documenting her progress, setbacks, and emotions. On tough days, she revisited her mantra, "I am enough." Her blog reflected this new chapter, blending scientific insights with personal stories. Readers responded with gratitude, finding comfort in her transparency. One message came from Karen, a woman battling osteoporosis alone. "Your story motivates me to keep going, even when it's hard." Susan's heart swelled. This was why she kept sharing, so no one felt isolated in their struggles. Yet, despite her best efforts, Susan faced moments of doubt. One evening, after a particularly tiring day, she sat on her porch watching the sunset and felt a wave of fear. What if this gets worse? What if I lose my independence? Michael noticed her mood and gently reminded her, "Fear is natural, but don't let it define you. You're strong and resourceful." Susan nodded, squeezing his hand. Support like this made all the difference. Meanwhile, Ruth's health continued to improve, and Susan found joy in caregiving, though she recognized the emotional toll it could take. She encouraged Ruth to join the Empower 60+ community, where she could connect with peers and gain support. Together, mother and daughter embraced the challenges ahead, strengthened by love and understanding. As the weeks passed, Susan's body responded positively to the new regimen. Bone density scans showed stabilization, and her energy levels improved. She celebrated these victories quietly but with profound gratitude. Her journey reminded her that health was a complex, ever-changing dance, one requiring patience, knowledge, and self-compassion. In her workshops, she emphasized this holistic view, encouraging seniors to listen to their bodies and seek help early. Susan's story was no longer just about overcoming a thyroid condition, it was about facing the unknown with courage and grace. Have you faced unexpected health challenges? How did you adapt and find strength? Share your experience and inspire others navigating the unknown. The late summer breeze swept softly through the trees surrounding the community center where Susan was preparing for her next Empower 60+ workshop. After months of personal challenges, including confronting her own health battles and mending family ties, Susan had come to appreciate an unexpected lifeline, the power of community. She remembered the early days when she first started these gatherings, a modest group of 10 or so attendees who shared their stories and questions in hushed voices. Back then, Susan's message was mostly about vitamins and physical health. But over time, as she opened up about her emotional struggles, the meetings transformed into something deeper, a sanctuary where vulnerability and strength coexisted. Today's session was especially meaningful. The room buzzed with quiet anticipation as familiar faces greeted each other warmly. Susan glanced around and saw people of various backgrounds and ages, each carrying their own stories, hopes, and fears. As the session began, Susan took a deep breath and shared her latest revelation, that no matter how strong we strive to be individually, it is in connection with others that we truly find resilience. I used to think I could handle everything on my own, she confessed. But healing isn't a solo journey. It's about leaning on others, sharing our burdens, and lifting each other up. Her words resonated. A woman named Linda, who had been quietly attending for months, raised her hand. I've been dealing with arthritis and depression. Coming here has helped me feel less alone. It's like a family. Others nodded, some with tears glistening in their eyes. The workshop included a guided group meditation focusing on gratitude and compassion, fostering a calm, reflective atmosphere. Afterward, small groups broke off to discuss personal experiences. Susan moved among them, listening and offering encouragement. One man, James, spoke about his recent reconciliation with his adult son, a story sparked by Susan's previous talks on forgiveness. Before coming here, I felt hopeless, James admitted. Now, I'm learning to open my heart again. Susan smiled, heartened by these moments of breakthrough. Later, as the meeting wrapped up, attendees lingered to chat, exchange numbers, and plan future meetups. Susan knew these connections extended far beyond the room's walls. They were lifelines in an often isolating world. Back home, Susan reflected on the profound impact of community in her own life. Her relationship with Diane continued to strengthen, and she felt supported by Michael, Ruth, Emma, and newfound friends. She also reached out to Gloria more frequently, their conversations a source of mutual encouragement. Social media played a surprising role as well. Her blog and Empower 60+ page had grown steadily, creating an online network of support that crossed state lines. Susan took time each day to respond to messages from readers sharing their own challenges and victories. One email stood out, from a woman named Carla in Texas, who wrote, "Your story gave me hope during a lonely time. I started a support group for seniors in my town because of you." Susan's heart swelled with gratitude. The ripple effect of her journey was spreading far and wide. Yet, Susan also understood that community wasn't always easy. It required openness, trust, and sometimes, confronting uncomfortable truths. At one meeting, a disagreement arose over differing views on supplements and treatments. Tensions flared, reminding Susan that diversity of experience could be both a strength and a challenge. She stepped in gently, encouraging respectful dialogue and reminding everyone that empathy was key. "We don't have to agree on everything," she said, "but we can always choose kindness." These moments taught Susan valuable lessons in leadership and humility. Her personal growth continued as she balanced being a caregiver, advocate, and friend. Sometimes, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but the community's support sustained her. She realized that by giving and receiving help, everyone benefited. As autumn approached, Susan planned a weekend retreat for Empower 60+ members, a chance to deepen bonds and focus on wellness. She envisioned workshops, nature walks, meditation, and plenty of laughter. Preparing for the retreat reminded Susan of how far she had come, from feeling isolated and overwhelmed to leading a vibrant, connected community. Her journey had taught her that strength wasn't just about physical health or knowledge, it was about the connections that nourish the soul. Who makes up your community? How do they support and inspire you? Share your story and celebrate the power of connection. The crisp chill of autumn settled over the town as Susan sipped her tea, watching golden leaves drift lazily past her window. The season of change was always a reflective time for her, but this year it felt more poignant. Life was testing her again in ways she hadn't anticipated. A phone call early that morning had delivered unexpected news. Ruth, Susan's mother, had experienced a minor stroke. Though she was stable and receiving good care, the incident jolted Susan into a new reality. Fear and worry intertwined with gratitude, grateful that it wasn't worse, yet anxious about what the future held. Susan called Michael immediately. "I'm scared, Michael. Mom's always been my rock. What if this changes everything?" Michael's calm voice reassured her. "You're not alone. We'll get through this together." Over the next days, Susan's world contracted to hospital visits, medical consultations, and the steady rhythm of caregiving. Watching her mother struggle with simple tasks was heartbreaking. Ruth, who had always been fiercely independent, now needed help with basic movements. Yet, Ruth's spirit remained unbroken. During one visit, Susan found her mother staring out the window, a soft smile touching her lips. "I may be slower now," Ruth said quietly, "but I'm still here. And I'm proud of you." Those words anchored Susan's resolve. She realized that embracing change meant accepting vulnerability and uncertainty. At home, Susan adjusted her schedule, balancing work, caregiving, and self-care. Her Empower 60+ community rallied, offering meals, rides, and companionship. Susan organized a special session focused on stroke awareness and rehabilitation, inviting a therapist to speak. Members shared stories of loved ones affected by strokes, deepening their collective empathy. Susan also sought counseling to process her own feelings of grief and stress. Through therapy, she learned to practice mindfulness and to be present without judgment. This helped her find moments of peace amid chaos. Meanwhile, Susan continued her health regimen, mindful not to neglect her own needs. One afternoon, she sat with Diane, reflecting on how family ties were being tested once again. "We're all learning how to be there for each other in new ways," Diane said, squeezing Susan's hand. Their relationship, once fragile, now felt like a strong lifeline. The experience inspired Susan to write a heartfelt blog post titled, "When Life Changes Overnight," sharing her fears, hopes, and lessons. The post resonated widely, with many readers commenting on their own stories of sudden change. Susan realized that by being open about her struggles, she was helping others feel less alone. She found strength in community, in family, and most importantly, within herself. As autumn deepened, Susan adjusted her perspective. She embraced the uncertainty of life, seeing it not as an enemy but as a teacher. Each day became an opportunity to practice gratitude, compassion, and resilience. She reminded herself and others that while we cannot control everything, we can choose how we respond. The season's changes mirrored her own transformation, a journey of growth through challenge. Have you ever faced sudden change? How did you cope and find strength? Share your story and inspire others to embrace life's unpredictability. As the first snowflakes of early winter dusted the quiet streets, Susan found herself wrapped in a cozy scarf, walking slowly through the park near her home. The cold air stung her cheeks, but the crispness felt refreshing, a reminder that life continued to move forward despite its trials. Winter had always been Susan's favorite season, not for the cold, but for the way it encouraged slowing down, reflecting, and finding warmth in small moments. The past months had been intense, Ruth Stroke, managing her own health, mending family bonds, and leading her Empower 60+ community through change. But today, Susan focused on something different, rediscovering joy. She paused by a bench where children were building a snowman, their laughter ringing clear and bright. Watching their innocent delight stirred something deep within her, a flicker of hope and light. That evening, she sat with Michael by the fire, sharing her thoughts. I realized I've been so focused on fixing problems, I forgot to notice the little things that bring happiness. Michael smiled gently. Joy often hides in the details. The warmth of a cup of tea, a kind word, or a shared smile. Susan nodded, deciding to be more intentional about noticing and savoring these moments. Her journal became a place to record daily joys, a blooming indoor plant, a call from an old friend, the taste of homemade soup. This practice helped shift her mindset from surviving to truly living. At her next workshop, Susan introduced a new theme, finding joy in the everyday. She invited participants to share simple pleasures that brightened their days. Stories poured in, gardening triumphs, favorite songs, cherished pets, acts of kindness. One woman, Betty, described how knitting scarves for local shelters brought her peace and purpose. Another, Tom, spoke about rediscovering his passion for painting after retirement. Susan noticed the room's atmosphere transform, smiles blossoming, eyes shining with renewed energy. She realized that joy wasn't just a feeling but a source of healing and strength. At home, Susan incorporated small rituals into her routine, morning stretches by the window, a weekly phone call with Diane, evening walks with Michael. Even mundane chores became opportunities for mindfulness. The kitchen, once a place of hurried meals, became a space for creative cooking and shared laughter. One snowy Sunday, Susan invited Ruth and Diane over for hot cocoa and storytelling. They exchanged memories, dreams, and hopes, the warmth of their connection filling the room. Susan felt a profound gratitude for these moments, fragile yet precious. She also noticed her own resilience growing, not just in facing challenges but in embracing joy amidst them. Her blog reflected this shift, blending health advice with reflections on happiness and gratitude. Readers responded enthusiastically, sharing how Susan's openness inspired them to seek joy even on hard days. One message from a man named Robert stood out: "Your story reminded me to pause and appreciate my wife's smile." "Thank you for that." Susan's heart swelled. This was the true gift of her journey, the ripple of hope and happiness spreading beyond herself. Yet, she remained grounded, knowing that life's challenges would continue. But now, joy was a companion on the journey, a light to guide her through shadows. As winter deepened, Susan looked forward to the holiday season, planning gatherings filled with laughter, music, and love. She understood that healing was not linear, it was woven from pain and joy, loss and connection. And in embracing both, she was learning to live fully. What small moments bring you joy? How do you nurture happiness in your daily life? Share your story and inspire others to find light in the ordinary. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains as Susan sat at her kitchen table, a cup of coffee warming her hands. Outside, the world was still waking up, but inside, Susan's mind was racing. She had always prided herself on independence, on managing her own life and challenges without burdening others. But recent months had taught her that sometimes, strength meant something different. When Ruth Stroke forced Susan into the role of full-time caregiver, she quickly realized the magnitude of the task. Between doctor visits, medication schedules, physical therapy appointments, and household chores, her days were full to overflowing. Yet, she hesitated to ask for help. "I can handle this," she had told herself time and again, brushing off offers from friends and family. But exhaustion was creeping in, and her health was showing signs of strain. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling day, Susan sat on the edge of her bed, tears welling in her eyes. The weight of responsibility felt unbearable. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was Diane. "Mom, let me come over. I want to help." Susan hesitated, pride and fear clashing inside her. But the genuine concern in Diane's voice broke through. "Okay," she whispered. When Diane arrived, she didn't rush or judge. She simply sat with Susan, offering a steady presence. Together, they made a plan to share caregiving duties, freeing Susan to rest and recharge. This small act of accepting help marked a turning point. Susan realized that accepting support didn't mean weakness. It was a form of strength, a recognition that none of us can do everything alone. Over the following weeks, Susan leaned more on her community. Friends brought meals, neighbors offered rides, and members of her Empower 60+ group pitched in with errands. She also hired a part-time home aide to assist with Ruth's physical therapy exercises, easing the physical burden. This network of support allowed Susan to regain balance. She found time to return to activities she loved, writing, walking in the park, and attending workshops. At one group meeting, Susan shared her experience, encouraging others to embrace help when needed. "Accepting support is not giving up," she said. "It's a gift we give ourselves to heal and grow." Her words resonated deeply, sparking honest conversations about pride, vulnerability, and the power of community. Susan also noticed her relationships deepening. Diane and Michael became not just helpers but companions in the journey. Ruth, too, seemed uplifted by the collective care surrounding her. In quiet moments, Susan reflected on the lessons learned. She understood that life's challenges were easier faced together. And that letting others in opened doors to unexpected kindness and love. One snowy evening, Susan sat by the fire, feeling a profound sense of peace. Her journey had taken her through hardship, healing, and now, acceptance. She was no longer carrying the weight alone. Instead, she was part of a web of connection, fragile yet strong. Have you ever struggled to accept help? What changed when you did? Share your story and remind others that strength lies in connection. The gray light of dawn seeped into Susan's bedroom as she sat quietly, sipping her morning coffee. Today was different. Today, she had decided to face something she'd avoided for years, the unresolved pain from her childhood, the wounds that had quietly shaped her life in ways she hadn't fully understood. Growing up in a small Midwestern town, Susan had always felt the tension between love and hardship within her family. Her parents loved her, but their struggles with financial instability and occasional harsh words left scars that lingered long after the house grew silent at night. Her mother, Ruth, had been a pillar of strength, yet beneath that strength lay sacrifices and moments of quiet despair Susan had only recently come to appreciate. For years, Susan had buried those feelings, focusing instead on building a life of stability and control. But as she navigated the recent storms, her mother's stroke, her own health challenges, and the fragility of family ties, those old wounds began to surface. It started with dreams, vivid, haunting memories of arguments, isolation, and unmet needs. Then came the emotional fatigue, the sense of emptiness she couldn't shake. In therapy, Susan bravely began unraveling those threads, guided by her counselor's gentle questions. Sometimes, healing means revisiting the past, her therapist said. Not to relive pain, but to understand it, and then release it. One session, Susan confronted a pivotal memory, the day her father left the family when she was 12. The sudden absence had shattered her sense of security and trust. "I felt abandoned," she whispered. "Like I wasn't enough to keep my family together." Her therapist nodded. "That feeling is real and valid. But it's also important to remember that his leaving wasn't your fault." This realization opened a floodgate of emotion. Tears, relief, and a fragile hope. Susan also reached out to her mother, sharing her feelings for the first time. Ruth listened quietly, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry you felt alone," she said softly. "I was scared and struggling too." This honest exchange deepened their bond, opening space for healing between them. At the same time, Susan revisited her own role in family dynamics, recognizing patterns she wanted to change. She thought about her relationship with Diane and Michael, about being more open and patient. The journey was neither quick nor easy. Old pain lingered, and forgiveness took time. But Susan began to notice shifts, lighter moments, more genuine smiles, and a growing sense of peace. Her blog reflected these insights, as she wrote about the courage it takes to face the past and the freedom found in forgiveness. Readers responded with stories of their own struggles, creating a tapestry of shared healing. One email from a woman named Janet read, "Your words helped me finally tell my sister how I felt after years of silence. It was scary but worth it." Susan smiled, grateful that her vulnerability was inspiring others. She also found comfort in nature, taking long walks where she could breathe deeply and feel grounded. In those quiet moments, surrounded by trees and sky, she practiced self-compassion. She learned to treat herself with the kindness she had once reserved only for others. Facing the past was not about erasing it but about integrating it, allowing it to inform but not define her. Susan realized that healing old wounds was a vital step toward embracing a fuller, freer life. As winter deepened, she planned a special workshop titled "Healing Through Forgiveness," inviting guests to share stories and strategies. The event was emotional and powerful, with tears and laughter mingling in the room. Susan saw firsthand how opening hearts could transform pain into strength. Her journey continued, marked by resilience and hope. What past wounds are you ready to heal? How has forgiveness changed your life? Share your story and help others find the courage to face their own pain. The soft glow of the fireplace flickered against the walls as Susan arranged a collection of candles and photos on the living room table. Outside, snow blanketed the quiet streets, muffling the usual hustle of the holiday season. This year, however, the holidays felt different. Susan was determined to create new traditions, not just for herself but for Ruth, Diane, Michael, and the whole circle of her newfound community. For decades, the holidays had been a mix of joy and pain for Susan. Memories of family gatherings were bittersweet, often shadowed by old conflicts and unspoken regrets. With Ruth's stroke still fresh and Diane navigating her own struggles, Susan knew that clinging to past rituals wouldn't serve them anymore. Instead, she envisioned something more intentional, a celebration rooted in connection, gratitude, and healing. The idea sparked during a late-night conversation with Diane over steaming mugs of chamomile tea. "Mom, what if this year we try something different? Something that reflects who we are now?" Susan smiled, touched by Diane's insight. Together, they brainstormed plans that blended familiar comforts with new experiences. They invited Michael to join in, his enthusiasm infectious. The centerpiece would be a gratitude tree, a simple bare branch adorned with notes of thanks from everyone. Each note would carry a story, a hope, or a memory, creating a tapestry of shared meaning. Susan also planned to cook a fusion meal, combining Ruth's traditional recipes with dishes inspired by friends from different cultures in their community. This was about embracing diversity and growth, honoring the past while welcoming the future. In the weeks leading up to the gathering, Susan felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Would this new approach bring them closer or highlight their losses? On the day of the celebration, the house filled with the aromas of cinnamon, roasted vegetables, and fresh bread. Ruth, now more fragile but glowing with quiet joy, helped arrange the table with delicate care. Diane strung twinkling lights around the room, her laughter a bright counterpoint to the evening's calm. Michael set up a playlist of music that spanned genres and generations, from classic jazz to modern folk. Guests began to arrive, many from Susan's Empower 60+ group and neighbors who had become friends. There was an energy of warmth and openness, a collective desire to connect and heal. The highlight was the gratitude tree. One by one, people stepped forward to read their notes aloud. An elderly man shared his thanks for the community that helped him recover after surgery. A woman expressed gratitude for the friendship that lifted her from loneliness. A young couple celebrated the birth of their first child and the hope it brought. Susan read her own note. A message of thanks for resilience, love, and new beginnings. Tears glistened in many eyes, but smiles prevailed. As the evening unfolded, stories flowed freely, knitting the group tighter. Susan felt a deep sense of belonging and purpose. The new traditions, born from vulnerability and courage, were more meaningful than any recipe or ritual. They were about presence, compassion, and the simple act of being together. In the days that followed, Susan's blog featured reflections on building traditions that nurture the soul. Readers responded with their own creative ideas, sharing how they transformed holidays to reflect healing and hope. One comment stood out: "Thank you for reminding me that traditions are what we make of them, they can evolve as we do." Susan smiled, grateful that her journey was sparking change beyond her own home. Winter's chill softened, replaced by the warmth of connection. Susan looked ahead with renewed optimism. She knew that life's uncertainties would persist, but so would her ability to adapt and find meaning. As she tucked Ruth in that night, Susan whispered, "We're creating something beautiful, Mom. Together. How have you transformed your traditions to reflect your journey? What new rituals bring meaning to your life? Share your story and inspire others to embrace change with hope." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the kitchen window as Susan wiped down the counters, her mind heavy with thoughts she'd been avoiding. Forgiveness. It wasn't just a word she used in her workshops or blog posts, it was a personal challenge she was still learning to master. Forgiveness had always seemed elusive to Susan. Not the easy forgiveness of small mistakes, but the deep, transformative kind that required releasing long-held pain and anger. For years, she carried grudges, against her father for leaving, against herself for perceived failures, even against Ruth for the moments she had felt distant or unapproachable. But as her healing journey deepened, Susan realized that holding on to these grudges was like carrying a weight that kept her from truly living. It was time to let go. Her therapist had encouraged her to write letters, unsent letters, where she could express everything without fear of judgment or consequence. Susan found the exercise both painful and liberating. One letter was to her father. She wrote about the loneliness she felt as a child, the confusion of his sudden absence, and the anger that simmered beneath her calm exterior. But as the words flowed, something unexpected happened. She found herself acknowledging his own struggles and imperfections. The man she had resented was also human, flawed, scared, and perhaps incapable of being the father she needed. Another letter was to herself. In it, Susan apologized for the harsh self-criticism that had kept her trapped in cycles of doubt and guilt. She promised to be kinder, to celebrate her resilience rather than focus on perceived shortcomings. Finally, she wrote a letter to Ruth. She expressed gratitude for her mother's strength and sacrifices, alongside sorrow for the times they had hurt each other. After writing, Susan folded the letters and placed them in a small box, symbolizing a container for the past, a past she was ready to release. The process was not a one-time event but a continuing practice. At one Empower 60+ meeting, Susan shared her journey with forgiveness, encouraging others to explore their own relationships with pain and release. The room filled with heartfelt stories, some about estranged family members, others about old friends or even themselves. Susan felt the power of collective healing, the way vulnerability built bridges between strangers. She also noticed changes within herself. She was less reactive, more patient, and able to hold difficult emotions without being overwhelmed. Her relationship with Diane deepened as they shared moments of openness and understanding. Michael, too, noticed her transformation. "You're lighter somehow," he said one evening, as they sat watching the stars. "It's like you're finally free." Susan smiled, knowing the journey was far from over but proud of how far she had come. Forgiveness didn't erase the past but reframed it, turning wounds into lessons and pain into compassion. Her blog post titled "The Power of Forgiveness, My Journey to Freedom" became one of her most read entries, sparking conversations and connections. Emails poured in from readers thanking her for sharing such a raw and honest story. One message stood out from a woman named Claire, who wrote, "Your words gave me courage to reach out to my estranged sister. We're beginning to heal." Susan's heart swelled with gratitude. The ripple effect of healing was real. As winter's grip tightened outside, Susan found warmth in her new perspective. She no longer saw forgiveness as a favor to others but as a gift to herself, a pathway to peace. Each day, she practiced letting go a little more, welcoming freedom and hope. What does forgiveness mean to you? Have you experienced its power to heal? Share your story and inspire others to release burdens and embrace peace. The golden light of a late spring afternoon spilled into Susan's cozy living room as she sat by the window, a soft breeze stirring the curtains. Outside, birds sang and flowers bloomed, but inside, Susan felt a quiet excitement bubbling. She was learning to rediscover joy, not the grand, sweeping moments she had once dreamed of, but the small, everyday pleasures that made life meaningful. For so long, Susan's focus had been on survival, on managing Ruth's care, handling family challenges, and navigating her own health concerns. Joy had felt like a distant luxury, a fleeting visitor she barely noticed amid the demands. But healing had taught her otherwise. Joy wasn't something to wait for, it was something to cultivate, to notice, and to embrace even in the darkest times. It began with little things. The smell of fresh coffee in the morning. The feel of soft grass under bare feet during a morning walk. The laughter shared with Diane over a silly movie. Susan started keeping a joy journal, a simple notebook where she recorded moments that sparked happiness or gratitude each day. One entry read, "Today, the sun was warm on my face, and I heard children playing in the park. I smiled and felt connected to the world." This practice shifted her perspective, reminding her that joy often hides in plain sight. She also reconnected with old hobbies. Gardening, painting, and writing poetry, that had fallen by the wayside in busier years. Painting, in particular, became a soothing outlet. With each brushstroke, Susan felt layers of stress and sorrow peel away, replaced by calm and creativity. Diane noticed the change, often finding Susan with paint-stained fingers and a peaceful smile. "Mom, it's like you're glowing," she said one afternoon, handing Susan a cup of tea. Susan laughed, the sound light and genuine. She also prioritized time outdoors, realizing how nature restored her spirit. Weekly visits to the community garden became a highlight. There, she met neighbors who shared tips, stories, and laughter. The garden was a symbol of growth and renewal, mirroring Susan's own journey. One afternoon, as she planted a row of sunflowers, Susan reflected on how much she had changed. She was no longer defined solely by her struggles but by her capacity to find light and joy despite them. Her blog began featuring posts about cultivating joy at any age, resonating with readers worldwide. Comments poured in from people sharing their own simple pleasures, a favorite song, a cozy blanket, a moment of kindness. Susan felt a deep sense of connection, knowing these shared experiences built a community of hope and resilience. She also learned to accept joy without guilt, understanding it wasn't a betrayal of past pain but a celebration of survival. One evening, as the sun set in hues of pink and orange, Susan sat with Ruth on the porch swing. They watched the sky, wrapped in a soft blanket. Ruth squeezed Susan's hand gently. "Thank you for helping me see the beauty in each day," she whispered. Susan smiled, her heart full. She knew the journey wasn't over, but embracing joy made the path lighter and richer. What simple pleasures bring you joy? How do you cultivate happiness in everyday life? Share your story and inspire others to rediscover the magic in the mundane. The hum of conversation and the clinking of coffee cups filled the cozy cafe as Susan entered, her heart pounding with a mixture of nerves and excitement. Today marked the first meeting of the new community support group she had helped organize, a space dedicated to people over 60, seeking connection, understanding, and empowerment. For years, Susan had felt isolated by her experiences. Even surrounded by family and friends, the deeper challenges of aging, caregiving, and self-discovery often left her feeling alone. But through her blog and Empower 60+ gatherings, she had seen the transformative power of community. Now, she was taking a bold step, creating a consistent space where stories could be shared, friendships formed, and healing nurtured. As familiar faces arrived, Susan greeted each person warmly: Mr. Thompson, a retired teacher with a quick wit; Linda, whose gentle smile hid years of grief; and Carlos, a recent widower still finding his footing. The circle grew, each participant bringing their own story, pain, hope, and strength. Susan opened the session with a simple invitation: share what brought you here today. Voices rose, hesitant at first, then growing in confidence. Linda spoke of loneliness after her children moved away, her voice trembling but resolute. Carlos shared the difficulty of starting over, grappling with grief and identity. Mr. Thompson reminisced about the joys and regrets of a long life, reminding everyone of the preciousness of time. Susan listened deeply, feeling the threads that wove them together, a tapestry of resilience and vulnerability. She shared her own journey, the losses, the lessons, the hard-won hope. Community is more than a group, she said softly. It's a lifeline. When we come together, we hold each other up. The session ended with a circle of hands joined, a symbol of unity and support. Over the following weeks, the group grew stronger. Members exchanged numbers, met for walks, and sent encouraging messages. Susan watched as walls crumbled, replaced by trust and belonging. One afternoon, during a particularly difficult meeting, Linda broke down in tears, confessing fears she'd kept hidden for years. The group rallied around her with kindness, sharing their own struggles and offering comfort. That moment crystallized the power of shared vulnerability. Susan also found personal growth in this work. Organizing the group challenged her to be a leader, a listener, and a learner. She learned to navigate conflicts, celebrate small victories, and foster a culture of respect. Her blog posts began reflecting these experiences, emphasizing the importance of connection in overcoming isolation. Readers responded with gratitude and stories of their own communities. One woman wrote, "Your group inspired me to start a similar circle in my town. We're healing together." Susan smiled, realizing that community was indeed contagious. Outside the group, Susan's relationships deepened as well. Diane and Michael both became more involved, volunteering at meetings and events. Together, they created a family united not just by blood but by shared purpose. The community group became a beacon in Susan's life, a place where aging was not feared but embraced with courage and hope. As spring blossomed outside, Susan felt her own spirit flowering alongside. She was no longer alone. Together, they were stronger. Who makes up your community? How has connection changed your life? Share your story and help others find the courage to reach out and belong. The night was unusually quiet as Susan sat alone on her porch, the cool spring air brushing against her face. The stars above twinkled faintly, but inside her mind, a storm brewed, questions and fears swirling relentlessly. Despite the progress she had made, one truth remained daunting: the future was unknown, and uncertainty cast a long shadow over her heart. For years, Susan had lived in a kind of controlled chaos, managing Ruth's care, juggling family responsibilities, and holding herself together. But now, as her mother's health fluctuated and her own body showed signs of wear, Susan felt the pressing reality of mortality, change, and the limits of control. Fear was a constant companion, whispering doubts about what lay ahead: loss, loneliness, failure. Yet, tonight, something within her shifted. She realized that fear, while natural, didn't have to be paralyzing. Instead, it could be a guide, a call to courage. Her journey toward this understanding began months earlier, during a routine doctor's visit when a small but significant health concern emerged. The news shook her more than expected, stirring old anxieties. But rather than retreat, Susan chose to confront her fears head-on. She sought information, leaned on her support group, and practiced mindfulness techniques taught by her therapist. Meditation became a daily refuge, a space to observe fear without judgment. One morning, during a particularly intense session, Susan had a profound realization: fear thrived on resistance, but courage blossomed in acceptance. She remembered a quote she once read, "Courage is not the absence of fear but the triumph over it." Emboldened, Susan began setting small challenges for herself. She signed up for a local art exhibit, showcasing her paintings for the first time. Though nerves clenched her stomach, she found joy in sharing her creativity. She also volunteered to speak at a community event about aging and resilience. Standing before strangers, she felt vulnerability transform into strength. Each step into the unknown chipped away at her fear, revealing a reservoir of courage. Her relationship with Diane deepened as they shared late-night talks about hopes and anxieties. Michael's steady presence offered comfort, reminding Susan she didn't have to face the future alone. At one Empower 60+ meeting, Susan led a discussion titled, "Facing Fear, Stories of Courage." Members shared personal battles, from health scares to relationship struggles, and how they found bravery in everyday acts. The room buzzed with empathy and empowerment. Susan realized that fear was a universal thread, but so was courage. Her blog post on this topic resonated widely, sparking conversations and inspiring readers. Messages poured in from people of all ages, expressing gratitude and sharing their own journeys. One reader wrote, "Your story helped me take the first step toward confronting my own fears. Thank you for your courage." Susan smiled, humbled and motivated. She knew the future remained uncertain, but she was no longer afraid to face it. In fact, embracing the unknown gave her life new meaning. It pushed her to live more fully, love more deeply, and appreciate the present moment. That night on the porch, Susan breathed deeply, the cool air grounding her. She whispered to the stars, "I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. I will face whatever comes with courage." What fears hold you back? How do you find courage in uncertainty? Share your story and inspire others to embrace the unknown with strength and hope. The soft hum of early morning filled Susan's kitchen as she prepared a cup of tea, the steam curling gently upward. She paused, gazing out the window at the garden bathed in dawn's golden light. After months of reflection, healing, and unexpected growth, Susan felt a stirring deep within her, a newfound sense of purpose that transcended the trials she had faced. For so long, Susan's identity had been wrapped tightly around her roles: caregiver, daughter, mother, friend. Each was precious, yet each carried burdens that sometimes left her feeling depleted. But through her journey of forgiveness, rediscovery, and courage, she was beginning to see herself differently. Purpose wasn't just about fulfilling obligations or reaching milestones, it was about living authentically, contributing meaningfully, and embracing growth. Her first real glimpse of this shift came during a community event where she had been invited to speak about aging and wellness. Standing before a crowd of attentive faces, Susan shared her story, her struggles, her revelations, and the lessons she'd learned. She spoke honestly about fear and hope, loss and love. The audience responded with nods, tears, and applause. Afterwards, a woman approached her with shining eyes. "You've given me hope," she said softly. "I've been afraid to live fully because of my age, but you've shown me it's never too late." That moment crystallized something in Susan. She realized that her purpose could be to inspire and support others navigating their own challenges. She expanded her blog to include interviews with experts, stories from readers, and practical advice on health, mindset, and connection. The blog evolved into a vibrant community, Empower 60+, where members shared triumphs, struggles, and encouragement. Susan also began volunteering with local nonprofits focused on elder care and mental health. Each act of service deepened her sense of meaning. One afternoon, while planting in the community garden, she struck up a conversation with Eleanor, an 82-year-old woman full of wisdom and humor. Eleanor's zest for life and resilience inspired Susan, reminding her that purpose could be found at any stage. They became fast friends, sharing stories and laughter over cups of herbal tea. Susan's relationship with Diane also flourished, their bond strengthened by shared dreams and honest conversations. Diane often said, "Mom, you've become a light for so many. I'm proud of who you are." These words warmed Susan's heart. She knew that the path forward wouldn't always be easy, but it would be meaningful. Her health challenges persisted, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they were part of a larger story, one of resilience, connection, and hope. Susan's blog post titled, "Finding Purpose After 60, My Journey Beyond Struggles," quickly became one of the most read and shared pieces. Readers wrote in, expressing how Susan's authenticity and courage had encouraged them to seek their own purpose. One message from a man named Robert stood out: "Your story reminded me to stop waiting and start living. I'm enrolling in classes I've always wanted to take." Susan smiled, knowing that purpose was contagious. She felt a deep gratitude for the unexpected gifts her challenges had brought. As the sun rose higher, Susan sipped her tea, feeling grounded and hopeful. Purpose wasn't a destination but a journey, a continuous unfolding of passion, service, and growth. She was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead with open arms. What gives your life purpose? How have your challenges shaped your meaning? Share your story and inspire others to find their own path. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Susan's living room, where she sat quietly, her fingers tracing the worn edges of an old photo album. Memories, both sweet and painful, flooded her mind. Among them, the wounds left by past mistakes and misunderstandings weighed heavily on her heart. But today, Susan was ready to confront these shadows. Today, she was ready to forgive. Forgiveness had not come easily. For years, Susan had carried bitterness toward those who had hurt her, including herself. The weight of grudges had burdened her spirit, sapping joy and peace. Yet, through therapy, reflection, and her growing support community, she had come to understand forgiveness as a gift, one that freed the giver more than the receiver. Her journey toward forgiveness began unexpectedly, during a deep conversation with Diane. "I want you to know," Diane said softly one evening, "I don't blame you for the past. I want us to heal together." Those words unlocked something inside Susan. A door she had long kept shut. She began writing letters, not to send, but to release the pain she'd harbored. One letter was addressed to her estranged brother, James, who had walked away after a bitter argument years ago. In it, Susan poured out her feelings, hurt, anger, but also hope for reconciliation. Though she didn't immediately receive a response, the act of writing softened her heart. Forgiveness extended beyond family. Susan forgave herself for moments of doubt, for times she felt she hadn't been strong enough. She embraced her imperfections as part of her humanity. At a support group meeting, Susan shared her story of forgiveness, inspiring others to confront their own unresolved pain. One woman, Maria, tearfully recounted her struggle to forgive a childhood trauma. The group held space for her, sharing compassion and strength. Susan realized that forgiveness was not a single act but a process, a winding path with setbacks and breakthroughs. Her blog featured a series titled, "Healing Hearts, The Journey of Forgiveness," which resonated deeply with her readers. Comments poured in from people finding courage to forgive long-held wounds. One reader wrote, "Your words gave me the strength to reach out and mend a broken relationship. Thank you." Susan's relationship with Ruth also began to shift. Though Ruth's health remained fragile, the emotional distance that had grown between them started to close. In quiet moments, they spoke honestly, acknowledging past hurts and choosing to move forward. Susan felt a profound peace she hadn't known in years. Forgiveness, she realized, was a doorway to healing, one that opened the heart and lightened the soul. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Susan sat on her porch, the cool breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, for the strength to forgive, for the love that endured, and for the future yet to be written. Who in your life needs forgiveness? How has forgiveness changed your heart? Share your story and help others heal through the power of grace. The golden light of late afternoon spilled through the windows, casting a warm glow over Susan's living room. She sat quietly in her favorite chair, a journal resting on her lap, pen poised yet still. Outside, the world moved with its usual rhythm. Birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, but inside, Susan felt a profound stillness. This was the moment to reflect, to capture the essence of everything she had learned on this incredible journey. Life, Susan thought, was unpredictable. Full of twists and turns, highs and lows, pain and joy. But it was also beautiful in its imperfection, a mosaic crafted from every experience, every connection, every lesson. As she flipped back through her journal, she saw the threads weaving together, courage born from fear, purpose emerging from struggle, healing blossoming through forgiveness, and the irreplaceable power of community. She remembered the night she first asked herself that haunting question, what if you lost everything and no one was left by your side? The fear had felt suffocating then, but it had propelled her forward into growth. Her relationships had deepened in unexpected ways. Diane and Michael had become pillars of love and support. Ruth's fragile moments had been met with renewed patience and understanding. And the Empower 60+ community had blossomed into a sanctuary for many, a testament to human resilience. Susan smiled softly, grateful for every chapter, both the joyous and the challenging. Though Ruth's health remained fragile, the emotional distance that had grown between them started to close. In quiet moments, they spoke honestly, acknowledging past hurts and choosing to move forward. Susan felt a profound peace she hadn't known in years. Forgiveness, she realized, was a doorway to healing, one that opened the heart and lightened the soul. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Susan sat on her porch, the cool breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, for the strength to forgive, for the love that endured, and for the future yet to be written. Who in your life needs forgiveness? How has forgiveness changed your heart? Share your story and help others heal through the power of grace. The golden light of late afternoon spilled through the windows, casting a warm glow over Susan's living room. She sat quietly in her favorite chair, a journal resting on her lap, pen poised yet still. Outside, the world moved with its usual rhythm. Birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, but inside, Susan felt a profound stillness. This was the moment to reflect, to capture the essence of everything she had learned on this incredible journey. Life, Susan thought, was unpredictable. Full of twists and turns, highs and lows, pain and joy. But it was also beautiful in its imperfection, a mosaic crafted from every experience, every connection, every lesson. As she flipped back through her journal, she saw the threads weaving together, courage born from fear, purpose emerging from struggle, healing blossoming through forgiveness, and the irreplaceable power of community. She remembered the night she first asked herself that haunting question, what if you lost everything and no one was left by your side? The fear had felt suffocating then, but it had propelled her forward into growth. Her relationships had deepened in unexpected ways. Diane and Michael had become pillars of love and support. Ruth's fragile moments had been met with renewed patience and understanding. And the Empower 60+ community had blossomed into a sanctuary for many, a testament to human resilience. Susan smiled softly, grateful for every chapter, both the joyous and the challenging.